Tell me ma, I won't be home for tea. We got beat at Wembley. Hello everyone, hope you're doing alright. I can laugh a bit now because it was painful on the day, wasn't it? But that is the second episode. It's just literally gone out. How do you feel about it all? The episode is called Tell Me Ma, Tell Me Ma. Obviously, the song that we sung all the way up until Wembley. Now it's been changed to Italy, as we all know. But yeah, we're going to talk about that second episode. And hey, Amanda was not best pleased, was she? Her words were, and I will quote, pissed off that the Premier League clubs all voted in favour in terms of your own clubs can't go and get deals from your sub-companies or, you know, close ties to basically the PIF. Newcastle weren't allowed to go and get another sponsor who were close to the PIF. Crackers, there's only us and Manchester City who voted for that. But obviously this episode focused predominantly on the owners and the fans, speak about the beginning of the final coming up, of course, and we're seeing, in this episode, we see a lot of the board meetings, especially the focus being on the seller sponsorship, which was, you know, Amanda said that after the cup final, we're seeing this, it's key for the whole purpose of Newcastle to try and compete in more deals like this. So we're seeing it. They had a board meeting, I think it was up Edinburgh, about a strategic business plan. Everyone was present, from Amanda, Miadad, even Yasser was there, all speaking about the commercial side. Now, Peter Silverstone said that we are way, way behind in terms of his former club, Arsenal. He dropped that in, and it was mentioned 2 or 3 times in this episode. Of course, the focus, as we know, during that episode was on the sponsor, and they had several of opportunities to go, and there was loads of companies listed who can go and sponsor Newcastle United for the next season. Of course, you are allowed 105 million over the course of 3 years. Of course, then during the episode, the focus then switches to local lad Dan Burn and his journey watching the club as a kid. And then we was switched on to Eddie Howe going into the final. And then it turns back to Dan Burn, of course, who stands in front of the dressing room to read out something really important to him the day before the final. So that's showing leadership skills, that Dan Burn stood up in front of all the dressing room and read out a poem. I think it was a poem off the top of my head. And then footage switches to Trafalgar Square. Obviously, we were all drinking. I was there. A lot of the lads from NFTV were there. Yous would have been there. All drinking around Trafalgar Square with fans drinking and singing. And what a day that was. For me personally, that was probably even better than maybe the match day to some extent. Just the fans gathering and just in joyous mood, celebrating the fact that we're in a final, yes, but we're coming together, and it's the really first time in such a long time, for years, prior to the takeover anyways, of celebrating like that. Of course, Newcastle fans showed their support by waving the flags in the final. If you remember, I was right at the front with Johnny. And what team does that when you're 2-0 down? You tell me what team is getting beat in the final. They know they're going to get beat. They know they're going to lose the final, and all of the Newcastle end, with about, 3-4 minutes to go, starts waving the black and white flags. That was an incredible moment for me as a fan, looking at that, being there and thinking, wow. I mean, I thought the Geordies was somewhere else. I'm a Geordie myself, but that was like on another level, that like getting beaten, you're celebrating, showing that, look, we're proud of you. We're proud of how far you've come. That was a real wobbly moment for me inside the stadium. I was like, bloody hell. And then there were short bits during the episode of players and fans talking about the defeat, of course. Amanda was shown visibly upset and talks about the difference, and I think this was in the car, wasn't it, between us and Man United, the gulf and the difference between the commercial side. And she said, again, that the shirt sponsor that Newcastle get is so important commercially. 25 minutes in, and you might have seen on the social media clips that there was a feature on Bruno Gomes, and he admits that he loves his chocolate. I thought that was quite funny. His girlfriend speaks about when the team loses, Bruno is very, very moody. I thought that was a nice little insight. He admits it was difficult when he first arrived at the beginning because he couldn't speak the language, but to be fair to him, he picked up the English really, really quick. And he says that this move was the best move he's ever made in his whole decision in his life for him. And he loves the fact that his dad is famous. Obviously, I see his dad quite often at away days, and he's pictured with a lot of fans because he's Bruno's dad. Of course, then the episode goes into Peter Silverstone once again, who looks after the commercial side of Newcastle, as we are now. And there's a feature on him. He says there's roughly about 40 people in the commercial team at Newcastle, but again, he references Arsenal, where he says Arsenal have between 150 to 200. And he knows that Newcastle United have to grow to reach those sort of employees, because that's more money coming in if they're working. For next season's kit, graphics were shown. Photos were shown when it was available to buy. obviously there was no sponsor on the initial graphics. I mean, when I say graphics, like players taking photos of the kit for next season, there was no sponsor on it. Obviously, when they come out later on, I think was it July that the kit was released. Obviously, you've seen the sponsor put on the front. But, you know, the club were holding out as long as possible for a higher bidder. That's why there was no shirt sponsor. All the photos of all the players, lads and lasses, were done without the sponsor. Amanda says, and this is the bit where it's important, in this, of course, it's the video title. Amanda says that the rule change stopping Premier League clubs from sponsoring effectively themselves or sub-companies. Sorry, I need to reword that. In a quote once again, Amanda said, and she was quoted, pissed off by it. And it's the first time I've really seen her angry like that. She was really, really angry about it. And it's another fantastic insight to see how much they care. Because yes, you've got money and you're a millionaire, but I see it with Amanda when I bump into her. I'm not one-on-one, of course, and I see in the distance she's interacting with young fans. She loves young kids. Obviously, she's got a young one herself. My dad's got all the time in the world. Jamie has all of them. All, you know, speak to the fans when because they're normal people with just a lot of money, and they can relate to a lot of Newcastle fans. So, and you know, they said that the ban was then you remember the ban on Premier League's voting in favour. The ban was taken away just a month later, but more restrictions were put in place. So a company that's owned by the owners can't manipulate it. I mean, you're just making the rules up as you go along, because the Premier League were effectively worried that Newcastle had all this income and we were just going to rocket through the league. Of course, everything that was stopping against us, it seemed like we were playing against a war against it all. Obviously, there was a heavy feature on Amanda about, you know, we're talking a lot about in this video, the shirt sponsorship, and again, how it was critical for Newcastle's commercial growth. Newcastle's poor, when it switches back to the football on the pitch, Newcastle's poor run of form, if you remember after the final, the lack of goals, we weren't scoring enough, was brought up twice during the episode. Newcastle fell, I think it was to 6th place at some point, and there was concern about Champions League football maybe dwindling away from us, because we were in the mix. Peter Silverstone, again, back to Peter, he says that the profile of Bruno, because it was a feature on Bruno Gomes, as I've talked about already, is that Bruno is a player of the club's dream. He's a very talented individual. The character of him is very positive, is very jokey, he's very, you know, photogenic, and it makes people want to watch him, which that means it makes Newcastle United money. And of course, Silverstone goes on to say that he suggested that Sellas should be because they had a board meeting again, that the Sellas should be, it was out of 2 companies, that Sellas should be the club sponsor going forward on the shirt next season. As pressure was ticking from Castoria, because Castoria were wanting to go into printing to get the shirt out, so the pressure was on to make a decision who Newcastle were going to pick. And of course, then started to produce the shirts. Darren Eales says that the value market of the deal with Seller, so criticism can also be defended by the club, that it's not like crazy money, that it's fair value for the market in the Premier League as well at the moment. So Newcastle haven't manipulated the deal, despite, you know, Seller being part owned or owned fully. I'm not fully the full of Seller, but I know there's a sub company of theirs. Focus then switches, of course, back to the football, and this is the stage where, if you remember in the season last season, where Isaac gets ahead of Wilson in the start 11. And Isaac scored in the game when he started to come in, and Almiron got the winner, come off the bench. That was when I think, was it Wolves? I think it might be Wolves. I can't remember the top of my head. But Newcastle were back winning games. So that was the second episode, a really, really good insight into the sponsorship. And of course, Amanda's clearly shown that she cares about the football club. The next episode will feature on, of course, Newcastle's run into the Champions League, and Callum Wilson gets a feature as well. But I want to know what you think of that episode, because I thought it was class. I thought this episode blew the first one out of the way. It was just so intriguing just to see, though, the boardroom, Peter Silverstone, Darren Eales, Yasser, Amanda getting stressed out, very, very angry. Just fascinating, because it clearly shows it's not just for the cameras, because you'll forget that the camera's on you. They care, they really do care. That's what I took from that. But yeah, interesting. Let me know what you think on that episode. Please do. Any comments down there below. And can you not wait, for next week's episode on Thursday? I can it. See you everyone. Drop us a like. Bye-bye.